You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. The Five Rings Podcast 2016 Rio Summer Olympics Edition on the Sports Podcasting Network. Thought I'd mix it up, Duane, a little bit today. You know, the Olympics are not started yet, but they are. But the soccer tournament is.
It has started indeed. Yesterday at noon, it got going right after we finished our recording our show. I didn't quite catch my train. If you listened to yesterday's show, I was trying to run beside the train tracks and grab a hold of it to take me to Rio. But unfortunately, it took me back to Toronto, where I did get a chance to watch TFC last night. So that was something. But we'll be in front of the TV as soon as we're done here to watch Iraq play Denmark because, hey, what else are you going to do on a beautiful Thursday afternoon but watch some real football? But we're going to talk about it first, Kevin.
Exactly. It's going to be quite an interesting next 2 weeks. Stay tuned to this very channel where you can listen to Five Rings Daily starting tomorrow with our live commentary of the opening ceremonies starting at 6:30 p.m. probably around those times tomorrow night. Duane and I will be giving you your audio pleasure, your audio fix about the way they're dressed, the way they walk, the way they talk, well, all those kind of silly things.
Mystery Theater 3000 style. We're going to live broadcast the opening ceremonies. I haven't quite told. There might be some background ambient noise in this one that might not normally happen because we're just going to do it as we go. And Kevin's he's gonna get all of his OCD put down, and there's not going to be any noise complaints, right, Kevin?
No, exactly. And we're going to listen to it too. So we're going to have some sound to listen to what they do. But no, it's going to be quite a fun time tomorrow. Yeah,
and you might get a guest appearance from Carragher the cat. Also from Elizabeth, the angry girlfriend. She may show up too. But all of these things, Kevin's cats may show up as well, but they're pretty sedate, aren't they?
Yeah, they're pretty just somewhere sleeping. So.
Yes, exactly. All right. Look, we're going to talk today about the MLS not trade deadline, but the end of the window and a little bit of the moves there. We're going to focus on Philadelphia. There's a lot of stuff out there if you want to just go through the transactions. We're not going to go one piece by piece because that's not really our style, but we are going to look at the Union today pretty heavily in our third block. Going to focus the first half of the show kind of on the Olympic tournament, which started yesterday, and obviously us being up here in Canada and in North America in general with both the U.S. and Canada playing, that's going to be the focus of the first block, and we'll start with Canada-Australia, which was probably one of the more compelling and interesting games of the day, Kevin.
How about the fastest goal in Olympic soccer history, Duane? How about that? How about Janine Becky?
Exactly. Although I would argue that the old guard was more involved with that. Christine Sinclair, who I felt played her best game in Canada in a Canada strip since that famous game against the U.S., where she was maybe the best game of her career. Clearly that day, the hat-tricking game against the Americans. But you were talking to me off air about it. So why don't you share those thoughts right now, Kevin, in terms of what you think Sinclair has done differently? Because I thought, as I said, go ahead.
Since London, Duane, we've seen Sinclair when she's as a striker position being a little bit more impatient and not angry per se, but trying to dictate how she wants to get service. You know what she said to herself yesterday? F this. I'm getting the ball. I'm going to do my own service, and I'm going to serve others. I'm going to do what I have to bring this team to a result that, hey, the result doesn't reflect the game. We all agree it was quite shaky on a lot of times in this game. But guess what? Sinclair should have taken that penalty. You were right as well. But it should have been 3-0. Outside of that, she scored, and as well as she set up Janine Becky's goal by not just making the pass, not by just not making the defender while the pass is being made, but by stripping the ball away from Australia to start the whole thing. So no, after 20 seconds, I was like, wow.
Well, precisely. Look, as I said, I think it was her best game in a while, and it's because she was playing a little bit more of a withdrawn role, and that's a new situation for her. I would call her a false nine kind of on the day. That's a term that a lot of people like to use that doesn't always make a lot of sense, but certainly she was playing a bit behind her natural frontline position. They weren't just quite booting it and chasing her, because I think they've realized at this point in time that Christine Sinclair just does not have 26-year-old legs anymore, right? That's just the situation.
And you don't want her necessarily at the 6-yard box. You want her at between the 10 and 20-yard from goal, right? That's where she can be 100% effective, if not by scoring, by setting up somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to allow, because someone else is going to have to eventually take over the main scoring duties of this team. And it's going to happen sooner rather than later. She's something like 25 goals behind Abby. The woman is not retiring anytime soon. That will be probably a bit of a distraction in the next couple years after these games, but who cares? Because there's not much they're playing for in those 2 years other than to get Sinclair some goals. But they do, that said, have to find a new role to allow other players to emerge. And Becky getting the finish there was an open net, but you still have to finish it 20 seconds of the Olympics. It's probably good it was that quick because you don't have time to think, oh my God, it's the Olympics. I scored.
I got a chance. No, exactly. You just like, oh, I just scored. Instincts just made me score a goal.
Yeah, exactly. And I never thought I'd say the day that Canada owns a world football record, but there you go.
I didn't say men and women. Have you noticed? I just said Olympic soccer tournament because that's what it is.
20 seconds in. And as you said, to look at the rest of that first half up into the red card, it was shaky to say the least. And Canada kind of looked like the bad old Canada that I rally against a lot, where, they've got results. And I think at this point in time, it's fair to say that they're a team that's savvy and knows how to find results even when they're not playing well. And that's certainly something to enjoy and like about them. However, they looked terrible until they got that red card. And for a few minutes after, obviously, although you can justify it when you're down to 10 players rather than playing 11v11 here. So you're going to be okay with that. But the red card, let's talk about it for a second. I don't think there's any debate. I saw it when I was watching it live. I went, oh God, that's red, isn't it?
Well, the debate is, did the Australian player fall easy? Yeah, she did. Was it the last defender? Was the Corsi the last defender? Yes, she was. Did she impede the chance clear on net? Would have been a clear chance on goal? Yeah, it's a red card.
Yeah, look, and it will affect the team moving forward as they're going to have to adjust their lineup for the second game. Although
it's a good thing it's against Zimbabwe on Saturday. That's the positive, is they'll miss one defender and have to readjust. But guess what? When they play better without, this has nothing to do with herself, but they play better at 10 than they did at 11. It's like they had a mission. Okay, now we know what we do. We need to defend. So let's go with this and we'll move forward.
Yeah, and look, the only sad part, and sorry, people that like Tancredi are going to sort of yell at me here for a second, but she was taken off to make the adjustment back to allow the formation to make sense. So we didn't really get to see what the formation would look like with Tancredi. And that's the one issue that I kind of had with the starting lineup, is why the hell is he still playing her? But, whatever, the old Warrior's in there, and I know a lot of people love her, and I appreciate her past performances. I just don't think she still has it. So I didn't really get a chance to see what this team would look like long-term with her in there, but I do kind of enjoy what I saw in the second half in particular. And I sort of was saying to someone yesterday that it almost settled them to go down to 10 players, because at that point in time, they knew what their role was at that point, and they didn't need to be ambitious going forward anymore. They just needed to defend that lead. And once they sort of got that, they got stuck in. And look, that's face facts too. Australia's finishing was horrendous on the game. They had several chances. They should have really got a better opportunity. Labe was terrifying at times.
Yeah, well, the one time where we thought she got injured, it turns out it was cramps, but the nerves, probably the butterflies. It's the highest level she started the game. It's her team now, so that's that difference as well. Herdman was very vocal a few weeks ago, saying, look, we're going to go with LeBay and we'll see what happens. And we have other keepers, yes, but we need to make a decision someday. So there's that aspect to it. But, at the end of the day, it's a clean sheet, even though it might not have looked like it's going to be one during the first half, especially.
Yeah, and she made the one save from distance. It was a 20-yarder where she got it the last second and bashed it over the ball, and it was going right over her head. Yeah. I mean, that was one of those saves that was spectacular, but at the same time, it's like, Jesus, had your positioning been a little bit better, you wouldn't have had to make it spectacular. However,
and the fact that when it was long aerial balls coming in, when she was going after them, she was not necessarily always getting possession of the ball or clear handle that ball, so it led to an opportunity for Australia to have a second look on goal after a save. Lucky Canada didn't concede, but it could have been the case. Australia, if they would have whipped a couple more balls in the box, maybe the story would have been different.
Yeah, look. The thing about an Olympic tournament like this is that we can talk about form and style and what they look like and whether it was a deserved result and all that sort of stuff to our faces, Blue. But the reality is this is the Olympics now. It doesn't bloody matter. What matters is the scoreline, and the scoreline was 2-0. Australia, the 5th-ranked team in the world, they kept saying that in the broadcast all the time, and they didn't look like it on the day. They didn't look like it up top. They had a lot of the ball, but they weren't really creating much. And I thought in the second half when Canada had 10 men, they were able, after they got to the halftime adjustment, to be not on the front foot because they were down a player, but they were full measure in that second half in terms of defending. Australia didn't have a ton of great chances. I mentioned one a minute ago. There was another moment, I believe that it was Buchanan coughed the ball up at about midfield. It was right after after the commentator said they shouldn't do anything dumb. Yeah. And then she tried to beat her in the dribble.
Commentator curse.
Yes, that was Claire Rusted said that, and I just had to laugh. I was watching it on my phone at that point because I was traveling back from my parents' house. That's where I really was yesterday, guys. And I was on the train station, on the train platform, and I heard her say, "They can't do anything stupid." And I went, "Well, you mean like that?" And then, of course, they didn't score on it. But there you go. That said, I thought that I thought they were full measure in the second half. I was more impressed with them in the second half than I was in many years.
Oh, it would make sense too, because at halftime, John Herdman would have had the time to adjust calm everybody down, adjust the shape, talk to the players to see how we should set up, how we should go forward down to 10, how should we take care of this game and keep that lead. And he had time, 15 minutes to do so, which he didn't have after that red card happened. So it would make sense for Canada to come out in the second half to be more adjusted, literally. But for Australia, what does it say for Australia? That they never really could take advantage. They did take advantage of the play, but never really got a chance to score a goal that didn't look like it was Canada's fault, if you know what I mean. Like when Canada was shaky defensively, Australia was getting chances, but it never really were clear chances that you would expect a team like Australia to get. Outside of Kerr, which she's probably really good from long range, if her name is anything to say with it, but she really got a lot of chances, but never could get past LeBay.
Did you just make a basketball reference?
I kind of did, yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, Kevin. There you go. That's surprising. That caught me off guard. Look, let's talk about the second goal now. It's okay. Let's talk about the penalty first. I don't care what sport you are, men, women, whatever. If you have the second all-time leading scorer on the field, on the ice, on the pitch, on the whatever, you let them take the damn penalty. And as soon as I saw Becky step up, and you see like her put her head back and take that great big sigh, I literally said out loud, and you have to take my word for it because you weren't around me, and said, she's going to miss this. Because you could tell how nervous she was taking that penalty. Let Sinclair take that. I mean, it didn't matter in terms of the 3 points. Yeah. I doubt it's going to matter in terms of goal def because, at this point in time, it's going to be tough for Australia to overcome Canada in this because they're going to have to upset Germany to have a chance, basically.
And
so I think
by more than one goal. Just to overcome that differential, yeah.
So I don't think it's going to matter in the end, but at the same time, I don't know, Kevin. Like I don't think I'm alone in wondering why Sinclair wasn't taking that.
Remember about 2 months ago, Josie Altidore steps to take a penalty.
Oh God, yeah.
He misses and he injures himself. And what did we say? Where was Jovinko?
Yeah,
isn't that the exact same thing?
Don't get cute, especially when you're in
just score. Just score.
Yeah, it's more justifiable in the Altidore. That's a TFC reference if you're not familiar. But it's more justifiable there because it's a long season and they're trying to get the score going. But in this case, this is the Olympics. This is a sprint. You are at the very end of a very long marathon. You are in the kick stage right now. You don't screw around in the kick stage. You just get it done, right? You just go. And Sinclair should have taken that. But let's talk about the third goal. The second goal, pardon me, it should have been the third goal. What the hell was the Australian keeper doing? Does anyone have any idea?
Lapse of judgment, lost the focus. I don't know. I couldn't. Those are always my go-to explanation when we see blunders.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why she was that far out. Obviously, she thought she could get to the ball first. Nice composure by Sinclair to score from 50 yards. nonetheless, I think that was an error there. And if you look at over the course of the game, the Australian keeper was a little shaky throughout, and it will mean, it's going to be tough for them moving forward because they're going to have to spank Zimbabwe in the third game. They have Germany next. They're going to be up against it in that third game because assumedly if they lose to the Germans, that they're on 0 points, likely tied with Zimbabwe. You assume Canada can beat them. Germany won 5-0 in the first game. It's a tough slug for them right now. They're going to have to hope the other groups go their way at this point.
We talk a lot about sometimes your TFC PTSD. I still have a Canada PTSD, so I'm still scared about that Zimbabwe game. What if Canada just get a draw? Because, well, they're so hyped with the victory. It's something I've seen so many times with this country that, I'm still, I'll feel better Saturday late afternoon.
Yeah, look, they have to they need to focus and get that result. I don't think Zimbabwe is very strong. That said, you're right. I mean, I've seen this Canadian women's team cough the hairball up before. I've seen the Canadian men's team cough it up a hell of a lot more than the women, but the women have done it in the past too. Certainly that is going to be a big game, but they've set themselves out. Like, I'm just looking at Australia and I'm thinking of all the possible disasters that now look at them, and I'm reminded of following Canada for the years, because this is normally where Canada is after game one. It's like you're all hyped up for it. Boom, boom, boom. Oh God, they lost. And then you're looking at the different scenarios and going, this is trouble. They could lose now. Whereas I think that win pretty much, I would say 80% put them into the quarterfinals. So that's the nature of this tournament. Obviously, if they get a draw, they will be through the quarterfinals, at least as a third place finisher, you would assume, because 4 points, I think, would make the best third place like 99% of the time. So they should be safe. If they get the win, they're absolutely safe. And that means in the course of this tournament, you're looking at one win to play for a medal, because you go to a semifinals. If you win the quarterfinals, and the loser of the semifinal plays for the bronze. So, right.
And not just that, when you're looking at a spectacle, that the fact that you don't have to win against Germany, or don't even have to get a result, and you don't even have to play Sinclair against Germany.
Well, there could be a situation. Yeah, there could be a situation where the two teams are on 6 points, and obviously both teams are going to want to seed themselves number one. But both teams are also going to be looking to try and work some players in and get some rest before that quarterfinal game, which is the most important game you play in this tournament outside of a gold medal game or a bronze medal game.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's the one that determines if you're going to have a chance at a medal or not, which is different than any other tournament that you have. Is the quarterfinals actually get a special feeling that you have a chance to play a medal no matter what. Did you see John Herman's face after the game? I think he was surprised as well by the result, especially how the game unfolded in the first half. And I think it's a relief for him too, because he's been the one maybe 6 months ago. It's almost like the World Cup last year, trying to damper expectation. Then it ramps up to Rio. Boom. Why not? We can get a medal. That's what they said. And oof. Expectations become really, really high and heavy on the shoulders, but that victory takes all that away. And now it doesn't seem so outrageous to say the word medal anymore.
Yeah, it's funny with this team because this clearly was. And heading into yesterday, because of the nature, it's an Olympic tournament, which always sneaks up on you, because especially in our case where we're prepping for the rest of the game. So this fact that our bread and butter also has a major tournament in there is something that really doesn't get my mind's not wrapped around it as much as it would be normally. You know what I mean? Because I have other things going on. But this clearly was the most important game this team has played since the end of the 2015 World Cup. And it just seemed like the first one they played freely in a long time too. There were some problems in that game, but the 3 points, this team has never been in a better situation after the first game than I can remember in a long, long time. So, hey, good for them. All right, we should take a quick break. We went a little longer than we had to there, but it's Canada, so we're going to justify it. Take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk a bit about Hope Solo and the rest of the women's draw in the first game, and maybe set up the men's game for today.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Zika!
Oh, Zika!
Hope Solo got a little bit of booing and a little bit of a jibe from the Brazilian people. Look, if you're not familiar with that, the U.S., first of all, the U.S. won 2-0 on the game. So obviously they got their tournament off with a good start there. But Hope Solo was booed every time she touched the ball by the Brazilian fans. And they were chanting Zika at her on goal kicks, which relates to just a couple tweets that she put out last month. There's one where she's wearing a full mosquito mask, holding industrial strength mosquito repellent, and wearing a balaclava just for good measure, I guess. And she said, I'm ready to go to Brazil now. And a couple other little jibes there and there. And the people that live in Brazil who, have to live with this day in, day out, kind of, I think, took a little offense to that of the big rich American. They see her as rich. I know that she doesn't make as much money as she would on the men's side. That's not what I'm talking about, guys. But in terms of a Brazilian average person, she's rich. And saying, you're a privileged person that gets to play in the Olympics. We have to live with this every day, suck it up and deal with it. And we're going to boo you because this is our country and we're proud of it. And you can understand that. In her defense, I'll read her quote after the game. Oftentimes it's part of the football culture to boo the goalkeeper. I'm okay with that. I was pretty focused on the game. What goes on around me in the stadium, honestly, it doesn't really matter. I don't actually believe that from Hope. She's a pretty good keeper, but she's shown throughout the years that she is affected by things that go on around her in the stadium. But putting that aside, the Americans with the win on the game to get this going, Kevin, and 2-0 over New Zealand. That's not exactly, I think, what they would have liked, but nonetheless, as I said before, the U.S., for them, the key in the group stage is to just get themselves rolling, because once they get into a knockout, they're really tough to beat.
Exactly. And we mentioned it. Some teams arrived like mere couple days before games, and you're settling into Rio, you're settling into your new not necessarily Rio. There's actually some traveling involved. If you're looking at Canada, it was in Sao Paulo. There's some games in Belo Horizonte. So there's games across Brazil. So for that tournament, it's not just Rio, but you're looking at, you're establishing yourself. You're getting to the tournament. 2-0 win against New Zealand. It might not be 4 goals like France did put past Colombia. That was a statement game for France. But for the United States, they didn't concede. They scored 2 goals and they're moving on. 3 points, moving on. No damage done whatsoever.
Yeah, it is. There's not much to say in this group. It's going the way we saw it. We predicted it yesterday when we did our Olympic preview that France and the U.S. were looking to be the dominant force in this group. This is the chance. We talked earlier about Australia. They're happy with the results in Group G, that it went to form. What they want, what they don't want now, having lost that game, is for one of New Zealand or Colombia to pull an upset and grab a point off of one of those big teams. We mentioned the Germany-Zimbabwe game. I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch it because why would I? It was, we knew kind of what was going to happen. The Germans just rolled. They are clearly the group favorite here. Nothing to really suggest otherwise after that game.
6-1. 6-1, close to a famous result in Brazil.
6-1, yeah.
But it was close to the famous 7. But Germany did pull a 7-1 using Brazil terminology.
I guess the one concern, and I use this term loosely, is the one. You never want to give a goal up, but that's about focus and concentration. But at that point in time, the Germans are not really worrying too much about it. That's something for Canada to think about. Obviously, they have enough ability to score a goal in this tournament for Zimbabwe, that is. So the Canadians will have to consider that before their game on Saturday. It's unbelievable. The first day, full day of competition in Canada could qualify for quarterfinals already.
That's actually true. We have Group E as well, the first group in the women's side. Sweden, South Africa, 1-0 Sweden. Brazil, China. Brazil 3-0 over China.
Yeah, I watched the Brazil. I watched sort of 3/4 of the Brazil China game because the Canada game overlapped it a little bit. A very impressive performance by the hosts. That's not surprising. China is a team that was really set up to defend throughout the game, but Cristiano, Marta, all their top players, they were really getting in front of this game. They were doing some creative things on the ball. Big crowd there too. I was impressed by the crowd, so I'm glad to see that as well, because the Brazilian women throughout their history have not always gotten the same amount of support that they probably deserve. So they certainly were the other day, and I do maintain that this is the team that might, they have a lot of their hopes pinned on their men's team, but I think that the women's team could end up stealing the show in many ways if they can get a result in this tournament in terms of a medal. And they certainly looked, to me anyway, based on 3/4 of a game against China, but nonetheless, they look to me like they're certainly going to be in the hunt, and I suspect they are the easy favorite in this group based on what I saw yesterday.
I think it all depends on the semifinal matchup we actually finally end up having to see who has a shot at that gold medal, because it's almost not necessarily a crapshoot, but it's so close any given game, and it can happen. If you take example, the four teams that actually looked the best from yesterday, France, United States, Canada, and Brazil, which are probably our top four, depending the Canada is in or out, depending on your predictions. But that top four on any given day, yes, you have the US, that's an outlier, and France maybe, but anybody can beat anybody on any given Sunday.
Fair enough. All right. We'll obviously give a lot more focus to this, to the women's tournament, next week throughout. We haven't figured what our weekend schedule is going to be like for Five Rings, but as I said many times before, so I'll repeat it one more time, the soccer tournament will continue to get focus on this show, whereas the rest of the Olympics will get focus on Five Rings throughout this. We'll touch on a bit, but more to throw it here. Let's look at the men's tournament games for today. As soon as this show ends, we're 35 minutes away from the first game of the men's tournament. That is Iraq versus Denmark. I'm not going to tell you that I know anything about the Iraqi national Olympic team. However, I will say that sometimes the Olympic tournament can surprise you. So don't necessarily go chalk in this in terms of what they look like on the senior men's team. There's a lot of factors at play. Denmark, obviously, as a European team, you'd have to think they're the favorite in that first game. Kevin, any thoughts on that one? Do you have any Iraqi handicapping?
Iraq always did pull up some surprising results in the world of soccer over the last few years. We have seen them getting victories or draws or goals when we're not expecting them to. So I wouldn't be that shocked if they do like a 1-1 draw or something. Brazil, South Africa is the second game in Group A today, 3 p.m. Brazil, South Africa. For Brazil, it's Neymar maybe has to put on a show for the detractors and the supporters, but maybe more just get a victory, get a good thing going, get this team with no controversy rolling in the tournament. Might be what Brazil needs to overcome the demons of the last World Cup.
Yeah, it's the hosting, the last two hosting derby of the full World Cup. Haven't seen South Africa in a while. It's nice to see them back in this thing. I think having watched them over the years, they do add a lot to tournaments when they're there and they're succeeding on it. They're on a bit of a down spell now, so it's nice to see them back. Obviously, the pressure on Brazil is going to be immense, and that's the game. I think for many people, probably, and this is a show that talks about women's football all the time, so don't think this is us speaking, but for many people, that's when the Olympics is going to start, is that Brazil-South Africa game, because that Brazilian team is going to have a lot of attention, obviously, so that's going to be interesting. Both the late games today are the interesting ones. We don't want to dismiss the Group D opener, which is the 2 p.m. Honduras-Algeria, because, it's Canada, and we got to say FH, right?
Yep, but Mexico, Germany, Duane, 4 p.m. It's quite an interesting game to start the tournament, but I'm pretty sure you're referring to Fiji and South Korea, aren't you?
Oh, well, yeah, of course. That is the late. There's tons of games today. All right, let's continue to go through this. You've got
Sweden, Colombia as well, Nigeria, Japan in Group B.
Portugal, Argentina, and you got Nigeria, Japan, you mentioned, and Fiji, South Korea. Yes, the Fijians, but do you have any idea what they Fiji guys? The big Fiji men? I don't know. What are they?
Islanders?
Maybe they're Fijians. I don't anyone know? Google at us, tweet at us.
At Sports.net.
What's the plural of someone from Fiji? Anyway, they're playing South Korea. That's
Fijians. Let's go with Fijians until we're corrected.
Fijians sounds right. So there you go. It's 7:00 tonight. Fiji's going to be everyone's favorite team in this tournament until they lose 10-0.
Which might be today. So it might be South Korea. I don't know.
Well,
maybe
this is their. I don't want to say they have a winnable game in this tournament, but this is their not get killed game, because their next two games are against Mexico and Germany. Oh my heavens!
All right. Like, hey, you wanted to be part of this? Get ready.
Exactly. All right, Kevin, let's take a break. We're going to switch gears, go off the Olympics. We'll talk about some Major League Soccer action, some CCL action, some transfer action, all that good stuff to wrap the show up today.
You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, Open Lines After Dark, Five Rings Daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe. And give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
This is a bit interesting. One last Olympic thought, Kevin. If you go to Google and go under athletes and then sort it by trending, you can find what the number one searches are in the world of football athletes that are at the Olympics over the last 24 hours. And the first and second this year right now are Hope Solo and Christine Sinclair ahead of Neymar, which is interesting to me. And if you look at the top 10, 6 of them are Canadian national team players, which says a little bit about their popularity, I think, in this country.
Yes, and well, it tells you a lot of who's using social media and who's counting for those standings as well. Because in Brazil, there's not a lot of people compared to the percentage of people in North America that are using social media. So that's why probably Neymar is not up there as well.
Yeah, Neymar's third. But yeah, it's Hope Solo, Christine Sinclair, Neymar, Janine Becker, Gabrielle Jesus,
Janine
Alex
Becky,
Morgan.
Janine Beckett, yeah, not Becker. Becker's a player. She's not brother and sister.
Becky Becker, yeah. Jesse Fleming's in there too. That's the worst photo I've ever seen ever. Just go to Google and look at it. I don't know whether they couldn't have picked a better photo for poor Jesse there. But anyway, all right, let's move on. We wanted to talk a little bit about some of the moves that happened in Major League Soccer over the last little while. It was the end of the transfer window. There's a ton of stuff out there, but I do think that the most interesting team at the deadline has to be the Philadelphia Union, who of course
went all in.
Pardon me?
They went all in.
Yeah,
the last few days, like, you know what? Making the phone calls here. Let's go all in. Bedoya, Davies. They're really considering their spot as the Leicester of 2016 in MLS, and they want to keep their place in the standings, and they decided to do moves accordingly.
Yeah, and they gave quite a bit up too. They really have no allocation left at this point, I suspect. They also moved Latu to Colorado, which is an interesting one. That one makes sense. Let's start with that one. Latu's a guy that everyone's familiar with at this point. He seems like he's part of the furniture of Major League Soccer. Kind of a big target guy, as you know, lumbering, not exactly a quick skill guy that you think of, more of a like, I'm going to get in your face and knock you over and put the ball in the net kind of guy. I think he makes sense in Colorado, and the way Philadelphia's been moving of recent, it makes a lot more sense. And they essentially, if you look at the moves they made yesterday, they traded Latu to Philly to get allocation and Gam for Gam, which they then flipped as to Chicago to get the rights to Bedoya. And then they moved Davies in to take Latu's spot. And if you look at the way Davies' game is, he's at the end, I think. He's been injury prone his whole career, so that's the risk they have there. But he's more of a darting kind of movement player, whereas Latu's kind of a target guy. And I think the way Philadelphia's been playing this year, it makes a little bit more sense there for them. But yeah, you're right. They're rolling in. They're looking at the East standings right now, and just to pull them up here real quick, they are on 30 points right now, 2 points behind the Red Bulls, 3 points behind TFC, only 6 points out of first. They got to think, tied with Montreal, by the way. They've got to think that they're right in there with a chance, Kevin.
Exactly. And just to finish on Latu, Duane, it was really telling when Jim Curtin needed a goal a week and a half ago against Montreal. It's at Saputo. He took off Latu when he needed a goal to push for the game. So that was really telling for me, and I was really surprised that was the move. And in hindsight, well, they probably find ways to bring more offense. I'm not necessarily satisfied with the recent contribution of Latu probably to the scoreboard, because they need maybe a little bit more to really solidify their place in the standings to make sure that people believe they're for real, because we're still skeptical a little bit.
Yeah, the concerns, if you look at some of the Philadelphia Union chatter out there, is that they made, and Bedoya might speak a bit to this because he's kind of a linchpin midfielder type. But they've been leaking goals a little bit. 35 goals allowed so far this year. That puts them closer to the top than the bottom in terms of the goals against standings within, and top in terms of worst in the league. Of course, the team that's leading the East right now has allowed 40. So there you go. That's got to be a concern. They would have liked to see get a defender in there, but I think that speaks to just how hard it is to find central defenders in this league. That is something that every team goes, oh, why didn't you get a central defender? Why didn't you sign some center half from overseas? Well, the reason people don't is because it's really hard to find them.
It's because not they're not trying. It's people are not saying yes, and people are not coming here. You have to develop them almost, and that's the vision. That's why, like, the move from Montreal to get Amadou Dia for Cameron Porter a few weeks ago might be underrated, But we've seen him play yesterday for Montreal against Roma last night. And, I was quite, not necessarily impressed, but that's what Montreal needed, depth in that position. And it's not easy to find. And that will become very useful come playoff time or just the last few weeks of the season where you really need somebody to implement that squad rotation to make sure everybody's fresh come playoff or play-in time.
Yeah. Look, I think that, again, looking at this from the Philadelphia perspective, I think we'll go through the Canadian teams in a minute and just sort of look at their deadline deals, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, sort of evaluate them. But it speaks to something we've been talking about over the last few weeks. It does seem like this is like a buyer-seller kind of market going out there. You look at some of the moves Houston's made in the last little while where they're dumping players left, right, and center, it seems. You look at a team like Philadelphia bringing in a couple guys, even bringing in a guy like Davies who has to be considered a rental, for lack of a better way to put it, a guy that probably won't be there in 3 years or 2 years even, that's there to try and push them over the top now. And this East is just, if you're in the top five, and New England is kind of just, I don't know whether New England is really there or not. New England and Orlando are battling for that sixth spot, which, as Toronto FC fans can tell you, that when taking that sixth spot is kind of a whatever. It's in a playoff spot, I guess, but to have the road play-in game is not necessarily a prize. And there's a bit of a gap there between 6 and 5 now that's developing. So if you're in that top 5, though, you've got to be looking at this as like, well, you know what? We're all in this with a chance to win this thing and to go to the MLS Cup final. And if you're in the MLS Cup final, you can be champions at the end of the day, Kevin.
Exactly. Well, you're only 90 minutes away if you're in the MLS Cup final. So
unless your keeper coughs the ball up in the first minute, Columbus.
Well, yes, that's true. That's very true. But no, that's the interesting part. You mentioned the couple of moves. Let's just go here. Montreal, we're not necessarily at the deadline, but the last few weeks have been quite busy. We mentioned the Amadou Dia Karen Porter trade a few weeks ago, as well as the Eric Alexander for Gam Tam, which in turn led to Montreal getting Hernan Bernardello and Matteo Mancosu. We forgot about it, but almost a month ago, Montreal signed Matteo Mancosu as well, a striker. He's really growing into his own, and he's been really interesting for Montreal because he creates his own chances and he gets really close to finishing. He did score already in MLS and get an assist, but he creates his own chances, makes everybody around him a little better in the days that Drogba won't be playing with Montreal and not looking so grim right now with the fact that we have Mancosu as a potential replacement, at least in training. So that's very interesting. And as well, you're looking at Bernardello. He's back with Montreal. Duane, Hernan Bernardello is solidifying this defensive midfield, helping to move forward. He's big. He's, more importantly, strong, very solid on his feet, keeps the ball, moves behind. He's intimidating as well. So that brings something Montreal needed because of injuries with Donadel. He's back now, but for a long period of time, they were without him, and mixed with Bernier injury and all those, you needed this type of player in the midfield to help that rotation. And Eric Alexander didn't necessarily have the same skill set like a Bernardello does.
Donadel is a player I have a lot of time for, but he's a player that has his weaknesses of his game are self-evident, right?
But he's a lot more disciplined. He seems like he seems a little different. Not as I wouldn't use brash, but the I want to make my place. I want to contribute to this team, but I see this team is not at the level and I have to work harder. The team he comes back in is different than the team that he left 2 years ago as well. And I think both sides grew. And so far, so good on the discipline side. Well,
yeah, and that's going to be the key. Montreal seems to have got that a little more under control this year, although we're saying this on the week when Drogba has a red card suspension. But at any rate.
Well, yes. But that was an individual, you know what I mean? It was a after the whistle. It was not necessarily between whistles. So it's hard to count this as discipline for the team,
Any thoughts, insight on where that culture came from? Is that just sort of an us versus the world kind of thing that developed in Montreal because this is a Canadian team and kind of they're outsiders in Canada and outsiders within MLS because Canada's an outsider in MLS, so it sort of makes this bunker mentality? I don't know. That's
maybe. I think there's something to say to the fact that Montreal existed before they went in MLS, that they had a way to play, they had a way to do stuff that maybe they could get away with before. That once you get to MLS, things are maybe a little different. Maybe that's exaggerating, but for some individual play, or just when Laurent Simon came in from Belgium, he had a different he was sliding more than other defenders. You stand out, you get a clip one player, you get a reputation that you not necessarily deserve. So all those things are making a snowball effect. So that could be the case. But before that, like 2012, 2013, I know what you're talking about, especially with players like Matteo Ferrari and all that. I think it stems too of, look, we know the game. We thought we knew the game better than this league. And you're allowed to do this in the world of soccer without taking in consideration that every league is different in context. So you have to adjust your play to it. Maybe that took a few years. Maybe we're there now.
Yeah, the USL, NASL impact were more aggressive than most, I'd say. Is that fair?
That's very fair. And that's how they won championship like this. And it was all fair. The ref will let it play. Left let it play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting there, and I think Montreal has kind of found its way by now. But certainly when they first came in, there was some adjustment there. A couple other moves here. The Red Bulls brought in Omar Del Mari from one of their affiliate programs. That's interesting too, this affiliate thing. And there's this resistance within NYCFC towards bringing in anyone that's in that Manchester City system. And I kind of wonder whether they're shooting themselves in the foot with that now, because there's a lot of young talent there that needs places to play. And if they can bring it in cheaply or sort of get around rules.
Sterling?
Well, I don't think they're going to bring Sterling in, but I'm talking about guys from their EDL or their EDS program. But certainly the talent's there. Anyway, it's interesting that the Red Bulls got a guy from an affiliate in there. I also find it interesting that Red Bull fans like to knock NYCFC fans because of the association with Manchester City, but they kind of forget that they have an affiliation themselves. They're both the same team. You know what? New York is what's the purple? New York is purple because both those teams have a lot of similarities, more than they want to let on.
Yep. So you're Valencia. No, Valencia is red. No, Valencia is purple. You're Fiorentina. That's what you are.
Fiorentina. That's the team. That's the purple team in Serie A. Yes. Any other things here to talk about?
You know, Duane, it's interesting. You mentioned Le Two for the Rapids, and I didn't have a chance to just say this. Le Two with Jermaine Jones, I think those two together can wreak havoc on any given night. And I wouldn't want to be a team in the Western Conference or in the Eastern Conference for that matter, because they might make it all the way, to have to face them in a playoff situation. Because with a Le Two and a Jermaine Jones, if they take over 20 minutes of a game, they could impact it as much as getting the scoreboard on their favor and winning that game.
All right. A quick trade I want to talk about here, that just because it is peak MLS, is Orlando City traded Darwin Sirin to the Earthquakes for Matias Perez Garcia, who was in Orlando B. So they traded a player to get a player that was playing for their affiliate because that player's rights were held by another team in Major League Soccer. At this point, if I still had hair, I'd pull it out, Kevin.
And this trade could have been even more if there's some GAM and TAM involved. If that were the case, it would have been the most MLS trade of all time.
Yeah, the GAM for TAM trade still kind of remains the same. So it remains the best trade ever. But that's kind of there. Houston made a signing from their USL affiliate. I think Houston is totally focusing on the future right now. A lot of things going on there. Actually, sorry, I got the players mixed up. Orlando made another trade, but the player that they traded for was Tony Rocha. Sorry, I mixed him up. Too much went on in one day for me to not.
Well, yesterday it's crazy. Yesterday, if you look at it with the CCL as well, just go there. CCL, Red Bull wins 3-0. But for me, it's Dragon. Dragon was so close. They were so close, but they couldn't hold on for the win.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. Final transfer rumor thought before we take a break. Wrap the show up with some MLS stuff. Talk about TFC's game last night. Mario Balotelli being linked to the Chicago Fire and Red Bulls New York. Oh wow!
Talk about fire. About that would be that meme where you see that dog on the chair. It's fine. And look, the whole room is on fire. Yeah.
Okay, I have watched Mario a lot. in my life. I would consider myself a fan of Mario. I think Mario gets a bit of a bad rep sometimes because of things that he's done as a 19-year-old that are still talked about 6 years later. And I think that if people talked about shit that I did when I was 19, you're going to have to put the E on the podcast now, Kevin. Sorry. Stuff that I did when I was 19, that, sometimes it's best to move on. Now, that said, he is a talent that is probably not fully materialized the way that we thought he should. Would he work in Major League Soccer to take this seriously? I think he would. Absolutely. He's a beast. He is an absolute powerful guy that if he's motivated, and that is always the key. And I sometimes wonder whether if he's motivated, stuff that people say about Balotelli is code and maybe not entirely pure as the driven snow where that's coming from. However, that is the reputation. If he comes in and he's given it all, I think this is a guy that could really dominate in this league. And obviously, he's Mario bloody Balotelli. He would be a marketing gold mine for your club.
Yes. Well, in MLS circles, yeah. And for the Chicago Fire, probably be the biggest type of player they ever got. Like the profile of the player would be, it's a game changer for them in a way.
Blanco, but yeah,
Blanco, yes, but like in the social media world, you know what I mean? In the social media landscape of today, that would be the biggest move they made.
Yeah, it seems like a different era when you go back to the Blanco era there. Like the Fire, this current Fire team right now reminds me a lot of TFC back in 2012, 2013. They're almost an expansion team, the way that they're operating and the way that they are. I know this is a team that's been around since 1998, so they're hardly an expansion team, but they might as well be based on what the roster looks like, based on what their success since about 2011 has been. So in many ways, it's kind of, you got to have to separate their past from their future. And in that sense, it would be their biggest DP signing because this is almost a new team based on the way that they operate, as I said. All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back. We'll talk a little bit about the friendlies, talk a little bit about the CCL. We'll talk a little bit about TFC.
Hey, it's Kevin of the Sports Podcasting Network. On SPN, on top of What's the Score, the Sports News Quiz, you can find a plethora of great sports podcasts. Hardwood Radio, Gridiron Radio, Sports, It's in the Game, Scuderia F1, the second most listened to F1 podcast in the whole world, Soccer Today, live radio shows like Open Lines After Dark, MLS Postgame Show, Two Solitudes Soccer Podcast, Off the Woodworks, and much, much more. All that on the Sports Podcasting Network.com. And Duane, sorry to cut you off. When I say much, much more, it's much, much more. 5 Ring Podcast preview that Duane have worked really hard to make are available on the website and on the 5 Rings podcast feed. Right now, there's about 15 of them out. So have a listen for your preview for Rio.
Yeah, and there'll be about 10 more after in the next 2 days that are going to get pumped out. So don't you worry, lots of stuff there. They're about 10 minutes each. They're bite-sized. They're not meant to be, I mean, if you want to listen to them back-to-back, certainly there's a lot of podcasts there, but they're more meant to be like a subway ride listen or a walk to the store listen. So if you have a sport that you listen to them all, I encourage you. But obviously, if you have sports that you're more interested in or sports you want to learn about, that's what they're all about there.
And the equestrian preview, I have to say, have had a lot of great comments, Duane. So I didn't know you were such a great fan of dressage.
It's got a lot of great comments. Me talking about dressage, it's an acquired taste. You got to move the horse. It's about, yeah. Anyway, yeah. I respect equestrian. I do. I don't think I watch it a lot, but there you go.
But Toronto played a game last night, and they actually got 3 points.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start by giving what's both sad and happy at the same time. Here we are in the 10th season celebration of TFC, and TFC has tied a club record last night with the most consecutive wins with 3.
Yeah. When you told me that, I was like, really? Oh, really? Ooh.
Yes. TFC has never won 4 games in a row in its entire infamous history. So that probably doesn't surprise most people, but it's a little bit sad because you would have thought at some point in Major League Soccer where things could kind of go haywire pretty quick, either way, good or bad, that at one point TFC would have won 4 straight. But no, that's not the case. They do have an opportunity to break that club record on Saturday against a reeling New England Revolution who's trading their players away. So you would think that they might be the favorite in that game, although they did play midweek and New England did not, and this is TFC, so whatever.
Yeah, we all know they can lose some in a row, though. I remember some years, the 9 in a row?
Yeah, they lost 9 in a row to start the season, yeah.
No,
we were going through to look. It's actually, they have 2 other occasions they've won 3 in a row, including once in 2008. So early on, and people always forget that. I'd like to remind people that TFC wasn't TFC until about 2011. TFC before, if you know what I mean, they were kind of just middling and not very interesting to anyone outside of Toronto in the first few years. But then they got really bad, and they got historically bad for those few seasons. But in the first couple years, they improved each year. So 2007, they actually had a stretch where they were doing pretty well. In 2008 and 9, they improved. They only missed playoffs by 1 point in 2009, and that was when they would have made the playoffs in the current format back then. So at any rate, but the actual record, and this might surprise people, TFC's record for undefeated streak is 11, which, can you ever remember a time? And I do remember this when I think back on it, but it was one of the most uninspiring 11-game undefeated streaks I've ever seen in my life, because it included
1-1.
It was also all competitions, because it included 4 games in the Voyageurs Cup. So they got 2 draws and 2 wins in the Voyageurs Cup. And then the MLS games included, it was half and half. So there were 6 draws in that game. It's kind of like Colorado's 17-game undefeated streak that just finished, had a bunch of draws in it too. So that's the way it works there. But 4 in a row is there. Another record that they did actually break last night is they've now, this is kind of one of those happy, sad moments too, that they've now scored 7 consecutive goals as a team. And that is, as well, is 8 consecutive goals as a team. They won 4-0, 3-0, and now they've won 1-0 last night. So that is, it was 4-1. So yeah, they scored this. I'm trying to get this straight. But anyway, the record is that they've now scored more consecutive goals than they ever have in their history. And you would have also thought that there might have been a stretch where they've done more than that. But however, this is TFC we're talking about, and it is what it is.
It is what it is. Last night, we mentioned earlier, New York Red Bulls 3, Antigua GFC 0, and Dragon took the lead against Portland, and Portland came back to tie and to get the lead to win 2-1. Dragon was literally the recipient of a bunch of jokes on Twitter, which made my night last night.
Yeah, look, I don't have it. Were they Nicaraguan or El Salvadoran, aren't they?
I think they're Salvadorian, yes.
Yeah, Salvadorian. So I now have a favorite Salvadorian team. Let's go Dragons. Let's go Dragons.
Exactly. No, it was awesome. And Montreal played Roma, Duane. 2-0 defeat for Montreal. Eric Kronberg was in net. You did see a little bit of the stars. Drogba did play. You did see Piatti. You did see other players. But the kids came in the second half. We're talking about Balou, talking about as well JGL and other young prospects with Montreal. In fact, that's why you didn't see them play earlier with the FC Montreal when they played in the early Montreal, the CCR. Earlier in the day. So last night, Montreal Impact Roma, a 2-0 defeat. But this game, again, there's nothing to take out of this game. Was Roma. This game was for Roma, for them to look good, to play, to have chemistry. And guess what? At some spell, they really did look good.
They're at a different level, Kevin. What was the crowd composition like? Did you have a chance?
Seems really, I wouldn't say full. I wouldn't say sold out, but I would say, I don't have the number in front of me, so I would say a good 17,000, 18,000 at least.
Yeah, and mostly Roma or mostly mixed, or
I would say mostly Montreal Impact, to be quite honest.
Okay.
There was some Roma, of course, and some Italian fans as a whole. You've seen always like Juve jerseys, and like, okay, fine, you're allowed.
That's the weirdest thing you see in North America. You see it in the CCL all the time. These guys come in with national team jerseys to cheer for the club team that's coming from their country. I don't get it.
Yeah, well, that's always the case too. Yeah, okay, let's go Azzurri. No, Azzurri are not playing. It's Roma. It's not half of the team is not Italian.
Yeah. Anyway, that's done with now. To go back to the TFC game, I think, because that is the game that actually had points. Well, the CCL games obviously mattered, but what matters, they got the results. In all cases, it was the MLS team playing the weakest team in their group. They needed to get the wins, and they got the wins. So that's all you really can hope for in this. You just want to get through this group stage to get to the part of the tournament that matters. We said that the other day. I'll reiterate that now. But in terms of the TFC game, I said that we talked about the records there a minute ago, Kevin, and those are something that are fun and kind of interesting. But what's more important is they have 9 out of 9 points on this homestand right now, and with 1 game to play. I don't think, I did say 9 would have been a successful homestand when this started. I don't think anyone predicted 12, but now they're in a position to get those 12. You just might as well get it. And the thing about this, on August 6th, if New York City FC loses on Friday and Toronto FC wins on Saturday, Toronto FC, folks, your Toronto FC, yes, TFC, will be in first place on August 6th. When the hell did you ever think that was coming?
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, like the Hades, there'll be snow. There'll be like, I'm saying hell will freeze over because.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll be close to seeing Dante in this. So I'll be probably at the 6th stage of hell when that happens. So, no, I guess not. I guess it's coming maybe.
Yes. All right. Well, in terms of last night, though, I a couple of quick things. First off, if you haven't seen the halftime interview with Jonathan Osorio, he apparently lives in Letterkenny or Sunnyvale, depending on which of those Canadian classic TV shows that you prefer the best, because he said friggin' twice within a 20-second interview, which is very Canadian. Friggin', and can't give friggin' losing the ball in the friggin' midfield. Anyway, and the other
like a very good impression of him. That's the thing.
Yes, the other storyline from last night, and look, this one legitimately made me happy. Tosin Ricketts scored the goal. It was a beautiful little finish, which those of us on the Canadian national team side of things kind of looked at each other and went, where the hell did that come from? He's now scored an outrageous amount of goals at BMO Field. It's like his favorite stadium in the world by far. Scored the goal to give TFC the win, ran to the crowd, said after the fact that it was just a very proud moment for him, and there's no stadium in the world that he'd like to play for. And he's clearly endeared himself to the crowd very much already. And it's a funny thing when Ricketts comes on, about half of the TFC fan base are also diehard Canadian fans, and they loving him up, and the other half, honestly, are just TFC only fans who really have just a vague understanding of who he is internationally. So they're kind of indifferent. But the Canadian side of that fan base was losing its mind with that goal last night. And Tosin's been a former guest on the show. Well, in Two Solitudes on that branding, but he's been a former guest of ours, and a nice guy, and a guy that had a very long spell where he was sort of out of the game because he wasn't getting paid, and he had to go through a whole contract dispute and had to train with TFC for months. So anyone with a heart, outside of the most, hardened anti-TFC fan out there, and I know there's a few of them, and especially in Kevin's neck of the woods, but outside of those, anyone's got to have a little bit of a smile for Tosin Ricketts getting his first goal.
Exactly. Canadian national team player finally gets a goal. He's not part of Unattached FC anymore, which is a great news as well. So for Tosin Ricketts, we are happy, and it's not against Montreal. So hey, good on you.
Yeah, and look, I guess I'll talk about Alex Bono. He was named the player of the game, and he made a couple really nice saves. There's no doubt about it. And certainly there was one-on-one save he made in the second half that there was the difference between 3 and 1 point in that game, no doubt. So he was given the player of the game, and they were really pumping him up a lot because I think that they, with the problems he had in San Jose a couple weeks ago, they want to, give him some confidence. Obviously, I personally don't think he was the best player for TFC last night, but that's maybe my own bias coming through. Certainly a lot of work to do in terms of marshalling the backlines and things like that still, but his reaction saves were first rate last night. And, a young kid that's had some problems this year so far, obviously in the first game he came in the San Jose game, most obviously, gets a clean sheet and the player of the game and a lot of recognition. So congratulations to him. TFC, 33 points, only 3 points behind NYCFC. That Eastern Conference logjam, 36, 33, 32, 30, 30 right now. Those 5 teams with Philadelphia, or with New England and Orlando kind of hanging on a little bit. It's going to be quite a little race to the end, Kevin.
It's going to be quite a fun race. Absolutely. And speaking of race and fun, more fun than a race, tonight, FC Dallas, Real Esteli, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. For all the nostalgic Montreal Impact fans here, Real Esteli was the first team Montreal ever played in a Champions League setting to qualify for the group stage in their run for 2009. So you can see that team probably get blown away by FC Dallas tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern on UDM and on Facebook.com. So you will be able to watch it on your devices if you can find it on Facebook.
All right. On that note, it is 2 minutes to 12. Olympic soccer's on in 2 minutes. So I'm going to say goodbye. Kevin, as always, I'll let you say goodbye to the rest of people.
Again, join us tomorrow for the Olympic opening ceremonies live on the same channel as you're listening to this show live. So you can go to youtube.com, search for SPN Radio, first channel that pops up. That's us. Subscribe, and you can listen to our live commentary of the opening ceremony. And until then, tomorrow morning, 11 a.m., live Soccer Today. Have a great soccer.
You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.